Maayong adlaw! It's Rain Baljak here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got the eczema and how I came to have the topical steroid withdrawal symptoms. So eczema is something that occurs in someone based on genetics, exacerbated by environmental factors. So these factors could be things in your diet, it could be stress, emotions, mindset, it could be things that are not seen to the human eye, like dirty places, polluted air, polluted water, pollutant basically, and other factors that cause this itch scratch cycle. Anyway, so with all of that information in mind, the way eczema presents itself is dry skin or sometimes flares. Now, flares are when the eczema is at its severe point where it causes inflammation. And sometimes if the inflammation is not treated properly or there is chronic pruritus, chronic itching, then it will result in infections. Now, those infections, if left untreated, can be life-threatening, and I'll go into that in a bit. So eczema is something that I have experienced throughout different life stages because of hormonal changes as we age. And I have experienced all 7 types of eczema, so I know exactly what it feels like this video if you know what I mean. And I managed to keep it under control because of lifestyle modifications, such as diet, exercise, lifestyle, mindset. And from 2017 to about 2020, my lifestyle was pretty monotonous. I would be weightlifting, I would be coaching weightlifting, and I would be coaching free diving, and that was basically my whole life that I did every single day. And that kept the eczema symptoms under control, and I didn't need any medication for it. I just lived like a normal person. And I lived a lifestyle where I did not require air conditioning, and being in the Philippines where the weather is more or less the same throughout the year, it's either sunny or rainy and the temperature is like a body temperature, you can more or less predict what would happen. So it didn't cause much fluctuations and my condition was under control. In March of 2022, I left the Philippines to live and work in Japan. どうぞよろしくお願いします。レインバルジャックです。And while I was there, I did experience some small eczematous exacerbations caused by changes in weather, like in the spring or in the autumn because of the pollen. But those I managed to control thanks to JAK inhibitors that are offered from the Japanese medical system. And I didn't need any oral medication, just very light topical ointments and a lot of moisturization. And I was really happy, like, okay, this is good. When I returned to the Philippines in March 2022, that's where my eczema began to flare severely. And because it disrupted my ability to function and think and do my schoolwork, I obviously had to seek the assistance of a medical practitioner. A dermatologist specializes in the skin, so I went to see one in the Philippines, and that dermatologist put me on oral steroids for almost 6 months, paired with topical steroids, and the percentage was 1%. Now, at the time, I just followed the advice because, you trust the advice of a medical practitioner because of their education, qualifications, and they know the regulations of that country. When it was around September 2022, I left the Philippines because my body couldn't handle it anymore. It wasn't used to the environmental factors in the Philippines anymore. In other words, my adaptive immune system was more accustomed to the lifestyle in Japan. And so when I was in the Philippines, there were a lot of exacerbations and it wasn't used to that. For example, in the Philippines, there is a lot of traffic, and unfortunately, it's a lot faster to walk than to ride a jeepney or your private car and wait in the traffic. So my way of, improving my situation and getting places faster, I would just walk. but my body wasn't used to walking on the streets like what it was before. And because there's so much dust and it's dry and there's the fumes from the cars, I guess that could have been one of the factors that exacerbated my eczema. And so that's why I needed some medical help. And then another factor was that someone suggested that I take an H. pylori test because this bacteria is normally present in developing countries like the Philippines. So if I am tested for it, then it can help rule out a factor. So that was something else I had to undergo. Now, I tested negative on that test, and because the environmental factors isn't something that I can control, I cannot control the waste management or water management, so I decided to leave the country and I stayed in the United States. And while I was there, I underwent topical steroid withdrawal, where I'm basically not using any kind of steroid. And because of that, my body was already dependent on steroid use. So when I stopped all of this steroids cold turkey, it resulted in red burning skin syndrome or red skin syndrome. It also resulted in brittle skin. It resulted in alopecia, not just on my head, but on my eyebrows and my body hair. It also resulted in chronic pruritus that interfered with my sleep. So I had sleep disorders from that experience, and it also caused some infections. It also caused a lot of dietary restrictions in order to manage the severe inflammation. So there are a lot of other factors because of the infection that I didn't know was happening, but underlyingly it was occurring. It resulted in me being nauseous, shivering, I felt chills, and then I developed a fever. And the weeks leading up to when the infection was the worst, I eventually was admitted into the emergency room. And that's where I learned from the American doctor that apparently you're not supposed to be using oral steroids for more than 2 weeks. The Philippine doctor put me on it for 3 months straight and then began tapering it, and it was a very, according to the American doctor, that's not the treatment plan that you're supposed to be on when it comes to oral steroids, because it not only causes dependency, but it also harms the adrenal glands and the kidneys. So on the Philippine dermatologist side, I don't know what her reason was for that treatment plan, but obviously it's detrimental according to the American doctor, and that's why my body was going through what it was going through. The American doctor explained to me that normally you are put on oral steroids for less than 2 weeks, and because of the severity of my condition, I had to stop the topical steroid withdrawal, and I was put on antibiotics to attend to the infection, and I was put on oral steroids for 5 days, done in a tapering style. So tapering is when the first day is the highest dosage, and as the days pass, each day has a lower dosage until eventually you stop. And then that was in November, and when I came to Australia in December, the Australian general physician that I saw said the same thing. You're not supposed to go on oral steroids for that long. And then she did not do a tapering style, but she did have to put me back on oral steroids for 5 days because my exacerbations were still so bad that she was afraid that I would be in a life-threatening situation because of the severity of my infection. So in the span of November and December, I was in the hospital twice for infections, and then I was put on oral steroids each time. And then right now I'm not on any kind of steroid. From that experience of the American and the Australian doctor, I also learned something. In America and the Philippines, topical steroids are normally 1%. But in Australia, they administer 0.05 or 0.02% topical steroids. Now that's a very big discrepancy between the percentage of the steroid prescription. So that obviously in itself changes the potency and how your body would be dependent on it. So that's something that I learned. At this time, my condition has been a lot more manageable, thank goodness. And I think a lot of it has to do with the diet that I have. I don't eat out, I control everything that I consume, and all of the products that I'm able to access here that have helped alleviate my symptoms. But the number one thing that I have to emphasize on is mindset. How you think every single moment of the day, how you think about yourself, how you speak to yourself, I think are so important, because that's what will get you through each day. And so it's really, 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 really important. Like, I cannot emphasize enough how much you have to think to yourself that I am well, I am healthy, I am beautiful, I am fine, I am calm, I am happy, and I have clear skin. Like, if you're not telling these things to yourself and you're constantly thinking that you're a victim, then obviously you're gonna keep repeating this victim cycle. So you have to empower yourself to be motivated and be positive so that you can overcome this condition. Because at the end of the day, it's you faced with it. And there's no one else who will save you and who will live and see you every single day. So I hope this video will help you in your path. If you have any questions at all, just drop them down in the comments below and hit subscribe, because I'll be talking more about all of my experiences with you, because I know what it feels like and I want to help other people, because when I was going through a lot of it, I couldn't find enough resources. So I had to do a lot of research and reading. And in order to save you time, I just want to share it with you. So I'll see you in the next one.